When Zenjin Chousei was just 6, his world was full of laughter and warmth. He cherished the simple joys of life, playing in the sun with his best friend, bravely, and basking in the love of his family. His father Solon was a pillar of strength, a hero in Zenjin's eyes. But one evening, as they were walking back home together at dawn, everything changed. Without warning, their peaceful walk was shattered by the deadly assault of the shadows of the syndicate Sots. Solon, sensing the danger, moved to shield his family. He fought bravely against the masked assailants, his martial prowess evident as he struck down one after another. But the Sots were too many, too powerful. In a brutal, chaotic battle, Solon was overwhelmed. Zenjin watched in horror as his father, the man who had once seemed invincible, was struck down. Solon fell to the ground, his body bleeding and broken. Faith, Zenjin's mother, screamed, her voice echoing through the deserted streets as she cradled her dying husband. With his last breaths, Solon looked at his son and his wife, his eyes filled with love and sorrow. "I love you both," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of his own labored breathing. Then, as Zenjin's small hands reached out toward him, Solon's eyes closed, his life slipping away. Zenjin stood frozen, his young mind unable to comprehend the magnitude of what had just happened. His father's blood pooled on the ground, and his mother's wails pierced the silence of dawn. The scene seared itself into his memory, a nightmare that would haunt him forever. The remaining members of the Sots approached, their faces hidden behind dark masks, intent on silencing any witnesses. Faith, her instincts kicking in, grabbed Zenjin and ran, pulling him away from the gruesome scene. They fled into the darkness, leaving behind the lifeless body of the man they loved. Solon's body was never recovered. It was as though the man Zenjin had idolized had simply vanished, leaving behind only painful memories and an unfillable void. Months and years later, after a somber funeral that felt surreal and hollow, Zenjin, now 8, and his mother were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. Faith, once a vibrant and joyful woman, was forced to take on grueling night shifts to keep them afloat. She rarely smiled anymore, the light in her eyes dimmed by grief and exhaustion. Zenjin, struggling to make sense of his loss, found himself isolated. The bond he shared with Bravely, his best friend, began to fade as the weight of his father's death hung heavy over him. She too was forced to move away due to the dangers that had infiltrated their once peaceful town, leaving Zenjin truly alone. In the face of his family's devastation, Zenjin made a vow: he would never let such injustice touch his loved ones again. For the next 4 years, Zenjin dedicated himself to mastering the ancient art of Wolf Ken, a martial discipline his father had practiced alongside his mentor, Sensei Zhongshan. The training was relentless, pushing him to his physical and mental limits. Each night, after his mother left for her grueling shifts, Zenjin would sneak into the basement, a hidden sanctuary filled with memories of his father. The basement was more than just a training ground, it was a place where Solon's teachings lived. Old books lined the shelves, filled with the wisdom of Wolf Ken martial arts and philosophy. And in the center, a worn mat where Zenjin would practice until his muscles ached and sweat soaked his clothes. Zenjin trained with a ferocity that belied his age. Every punch, every kick was a tribute to his father, a way of keeping his memory alive. But his training was not just physical. Through meditation and concentration, Zenjin unlocked a secret power, a legacy his father had left him. He discovered he could manipulate metal with his mind, bending and shaping it at will. By the time he was 12, Zenjin was no longer the fragile child who had witnessed his father's death. He was a formidable fighter, his body and mind honed through years of rigorous training. His metal powers, combined with his martial skills, made him a force to be reckoned with. Yet he kept his abilities hidden, knowing that revealing them would only bring more danger to his family. The country of Uther, once a beacon of hope, had descended into chaos. Crime lords and corrupt officials thrived under the cover of darkness, and the people lived in fear. But Zenjin was determined to change that. As his mother left for work each night, he donned a sleek dark suit reinforced with metal, and a mask that obscured his identity. He became a silent guardian, a shadow moving through the city's underbelly. Each night he confronted the crime lords who preyed on the innocent, using his metal powers to dismantle their operations. He struck from the darkness, leaving no trace but the wreckage of their schemes. Yet even as he fought for justice, a part of him was still searching. He longed to bring back the peace and security his family had once known. And somewhere, deep in his heart, he hoped to see Bravely again, to find the friend who had been torn away from him. As the neon lights flickered to life across the city skyline, Zenjin stood on a rooftop, his eyes scanning the streets below. His heart beat with a singular purpose: to protect his mother, to avenge his father, and to ensure that no one else would suffer as they had. With a deep breath, he stepped into the night, his mental powers thrumming at his command. Each crime lord he faced, each dark corner he explored, was a step toward keeping his promise. Tonight, and every night, Zenjin Chousei would be the silent guardian. The vigilante who sought justice. Not just for his father, but for the safety of his city and the memory of his best friend, bravely.